John, in his gospel, does something absolutely amazing. He gets down to the triumphant entry on Sunday, and he records Jesus coming into Jerusalem. Matthew, Mark, and Luke will start right there, and they will then tell you story after story after story of what happened on Monday, and what happened on Tuesday, and what happened on Wednesday. And you get in those three Gospels all kinds of parables and stories and just a lot of teaching that takes place. In fact, for Matthew, Mark, and Luke, what happens on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday takes up most of that Passion Week. John, when he writes his Gospel, skips it all. He gets to Sunday night, and then when you start chapter 13, he goes all the way over to, depending on how you date the crucifixion, either Wednesday night or Thursday night. And what he does is he spends the majority of his time, not on the last week of Jesus' life, but literally on the last day, the last 24 hours of his life. More there than in Matthew, Mark, and Luke combined. When you get to chapter 13, Chapter 13 begins with a very important statement. I want you to notice what he says here. It was just before Passover. In other words, Passover week started on Sunday with a sheep being brought into the city, and then it would take place either that Thursday or that Friday. And so right before Passover, Jesus knew. Very important word. I want you to see that up there. There's something about knowing. You know, have you ever been waiting for tests? I mean, you've had a test run and you're waiting for that test, and it doesn't seem that test is going to be there, and it just drives you bananas, you know. And then finally you hear the test, and it's finally like, at least I know what I'm dealing with, whether it's good or bad. At least I know. Knowledge is powerful. Jesus knew that his hour has come and that he was going to leave the world and go back to his Father. And he had loved his disciples, and he was going to love them to the very end. And then he says in the very next two verses, the evening meal was in progress. The devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And Jesus knew what the Father had done by putting all things under his feet. Jesus knew it. And so Jesus got up and did something amazing. Now, you need to understand something about Peter and Andrew, James and John, Philip, Bartholomew, and all these guys. For some time, they had been in a big argument. And the argument boiled down to a very simple question. Who's greatest in the kingdom? It had started all the way back in Galilee. And they'd been going at it all the way down as they went to Jerusalem. And even in the upper room, on the night of betrayal, while Jesus is preparing to die for you and me, all the apostles could think about was who is the greatest. And here's Luke's account of it. This is Luke 22, upper room. A dispute also arose among them again as to which of them was considered to be greatest. And so John, knowing that Matthew, Mark, and Luke had not recorded a very important event, tells the story of Jesus as he's sitting there and the meal was taking place, and Jesus had noticed something in particular that had taken place. Everybody was eating with dirty feet. You see, it was customary in biblical times when you walked into a room for someone to be there to wash your feet. But when everyone's arguing about who's the greatest, guess what you're not going to do? You see, great people don't wash other people's feet. And Jesus was fixing to let them know that, no, they don't in the eyes of the world, but they do in the eyes of God. And so the text says that Jesus got up, he took off his outer garment, he put on a towel around his waist, and he took water and began to go around and wash the disciples' feet. He comes to Peter, and Peter is so humiliated by it, he refuses to let the Lord wash his feet. And Jesus says, if you don't let me wash your feet, you have nothing to do with me. And Peter says, then give me a whole bath, Lord. And he says, your feet are what stink, Peter. And that's what needs to be washed. And then having washed them, he went and sat back down, and the text says that when he had finished, he put his clothes back on, returned to his place, and then he asked a very simple question. Do you understand what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, because that's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, guys, can you wash each other's feet? And then he put it real simply. I've set an example. Will you do as I've done to you? Sometimes it's hard for us as Christians still to understand that all these years later. We still get caught up in the worldly view of understanding what greatness is and don't realize that if you want to be great, you know what you do? You just be a servant. Years ago, we had a couple here at Northside, and we had launched a new program. It was called Room in the Inn. And the ones who initially directed that program, Ronnie and Judy Lashbrook, were leaving Northside. And of course, we were sitting there thinking, okay, who are we going to get to take over that ministry? Man, that's a huge ministry, and it's a hard ministry. And so we just kind of threw it out there. If somebody would like to take over this ministry, it's here. And we had a couple by the name of Allan and Jennifer Comer who said, we'll take that work. Now, I was fairly confident that Jennifer could do it, but Allan Comer? I've known Allan for a long time. Allan, what I guess draws me to Allan is that Allan is further back in the sticks than I'm from. I mean, I thought I was country until I met Allan. And I mean, he put country in country. And he invited me one time to his family reunion up in Gamaliel, Kentucky. And honestly, I thought I was going to die before I got there. It is so far back in the middle of nowhere that you don't end up there unless you're planning on going there. And I don't know why anybody would want to plan on going there. But we did. Allan and Jennifer took over that ministry, and they were perfect for it. I quickly learned that what made them special was that they were truly people who Jesus had described when he said, if you want to follow me, do what I've done. Allan's going through a tough time in his life right now. And he and Stan's going to talk about what Jesus means to someone when they go through the tough times of their life. So I want to invite Stan and Allan Comer to come up here and sit down, and I'm going to turn it over to them.
Allan had asked if he could say something to the church, but he wasn't comfortable taking the preacher's role. So he asked if I could just sit up here with him in front of you and ask him a few questions and let him have a chance to answer it. And I thought that was a great opportunity for him. So you all know Allan Comer. There's no need to introduce him. Let me just ask a few questions, simple questions. But let's begin with telling us a little bit of your history and specifically how you grew up and became a part of the kingdom of Christ.
Well, I was born in Tompkinsville, Kentucky, raised in Gamaliel, a little town over next to it. My family was a good Christian family. The women always went to church and the men worked. And that's, as a little boy, we always went with my grandmother and my mother, and my grandmother did not miss a day of church, no matter what it was, how sick she was or anything else, until the day she died. And she was a great role model for me. My mother was. She was always trying to get, even later on in life, whenever I left there and joined the military, she always tried to get me to go to church. And I told her, I said, I just don't feel right going to church. And for many years, I stayed away from church and wasn't proud of the things that I've done. But before my mother died, we'd talked, and I helped with her before her death. And she says, why don't you go to church? And I said, Mom, it's like this. I said, had you rather see me to go to church to please you or go to church to please God? And she said, well, when are you going to do it? I want you to now. I said, I do not feel comfortable going to church just because you want me to. I love you and everything, but I want to go to church. And when I do decide to go to church, I will do it in God's eyes and for God and for myself and for everybody else.
And so you did that then. What was it that facilitated that? What led you to make that commitment?
Me and Michael, we was living in Gallatin. He was 4 years old. And one night, like I said, I didn't live a good Christian life. And I was swearing and cussing all the time. And my son was around then. And he seen that. And one night, he woke up and he was cussing. I mean, cussing like a sailor. And I sit there.
Apologies to any sailors.
Yeah, well, you know. But the thing is I heard that, and I thought to myself, and I said, this is not a life for my son to be raised up in. And right then and there, I decided that I need to start going to church. And I started going to church down in Linville, Tennessee, with same as my parents, a preacher up in Gamel, him and his wife and family. I started driving all the way from Gallatin, all the way down to Linville on Sundays. Yeah, I did it, you know. It was a tough drive. But, you know, I went and started going back to church for a little bit, and I decided one Sunday, I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go up front, and I'm going to live, and I'm going to give my heart, my soul, my body to God and Jesus Christ. And I totally committed to that. And from that day forward, life changed from me instantly. I mean, instantly. The things in my life were so much different. And I seen the people in a different way than I ever have in my life. I seen people for the goodness. I seen the bright and the angels in each and every one of the people that I met in my life, especially here, the people of Northside. What a group of people that I admire, I look up to because of their spiritual. It's just hard to describe because of the people, and it's reflected through the work, the people that I work with. I look at everybody, not the people on Northside, but everybody out that I come to in this world. I see the brightness and the kindness in their hearts that they don't even see themselves. And I try to help them see that. No matter who they are, if they're a Christian or not, I have always tried to tell them what I see in each individual that I have met over my years. And now that I'm sick, and I have...
Wait a minute. Before you go too far, let's talk about that sickness. Tell us a little bit about your health struggle and the diagnosis.
Okay. Last September, I went to the doctor. Well, I waited a few months because I'd had problems swallowing. And I went, and Jennifer said, well, I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and she said, well, you need to go to the doctor. And I said, well, I'm going to work until I come home and see my doctor. So I waited a couple months of doing that, and then whenever I went to the doctor, he said, well, the earliest we can get in is, I think it was the end of September. It was a good month away, and my wife, she just totally went out mad, and she called the doctor up and said, no, he needs to go now, not later. And she got me in there in a week. It was really quick for what she done for me.
She can be pretty vicious.
Yeah, she is. Very vicious. But I went there, and they did upper GI. The doctor, my doctor looked at me and said, well, we need to get you for upper GI. I said, okay. So I went in. They did the scope, and they took a test. They said, well, we found something in your throat. And I said, okay. And he took a biopsy of it, and he come back and called me. He said, "Well, Allan, it's cancer." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." And he says, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "No, not really." I said, "I'm leaving it all up to God. Whatever he chooses for me is fine with me, whatever it is." And he said, "Wow, you're a different breed of man, because most people would have just bawled." And I said, "Nah, not me. I ain't going to be like that." And then we started the process of chemo and radiation for 5 weeks. I worked every day, even through the process. I'd drive from Evansville, Indiana, down here, do my treatment, drive back up there and work the nights. I did that for 5 weeks. I love my job. I love my job, and I still do. I just hate leaving it. But I'm getting to where that I am not physically able to handle it. And that, whatever God throws my way, I'm going to take it in stride.
All right, so you were working through your chemo and radiation, 5 weeks of that. That obviously shrunk the tumor.
Yes.
What he didn't say was he had a cancerous tumor wrapped around his esophagus.
Yeah.
And so they shrunk it enough to where they could go in and do surgery.
Right.
And remove it. And how did they remove that?
They removed part of my upper part of my stomach and my esophagus, and then they reattached them back.
So they took out a chunk and they brought your stomach up and reattached it to the remaining part of the esophagus.
Right.
And was there more treatment, chemo and radiation after that?
No, I'd stayed away for. They said I couldn't do anything for that. I stayed in the hospital and I was off work for 6 weeks. Went back to work, and so they said 3 months later they'll do another CAT scan.
Now in that they said, when we do that CAT scan, if the cancer has returned, there's not much they can do about it. They knew up front that if it comes back, it's going to be bad.
Yeah,
right?
They told me at the beginning of all this that. I mean, even when I found out, the doctor counselor told me, said, if you do get cancer back, there is nothing that we can do for this. And I said, okay.
And it came back.
It came back we went back in March, and I thought I was fine. Matter of fact, I went out and bought a brand new camper, and and getting ready for my job because I travel a lot. So I went out and bought a brand new camper and got ready for life, planning for a good, healthy life ahead of me. And I went back in June because I knew there was something wrong. I knew it for a while. And Jennifer always said, "No, there ain't nothing wrong. You are fine. We're going to be fine. We got so many years together." And I said, "Whatever the Lord wants." I've always left everything up to God. All the way through this whole thing, it's been about God. It's not been about me. And Jennifer, she's been a trooper. She said, well, she was sad. And I understand. And we talked about it. And she said that she wanted me around longer. And I said, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's all about the man upstairs. It's all about him. Whatever he wishes, whatever his request for me is, it will be done. It doesn't matter to me. I'm good with dying.
Now, but before you go on, and we're getting close to the end of the time here, so we're going to try to not belabor this, but what I wanted really to hear you speak to is how this diagnosis, the final diagnosis that you've got a certain period left in this world, how that impacted your faith. Just real quickly, tell us what that did to your faith in God.
My faith in God, it has been strong, but I think it got even stronger. It got stronger whenever I heard I had cancer for the first time. And I didn't think it would get any stronger, but whenever I was diagnosed that I haven't got much time left, it even grew more. It has grown so much. There's nothing about this cancer that bothers me. I am ready 100% to go and be with my Father up in heaven. The only thing is that I'm going to miss people. But it's only going to be for a blink of an eye for me. I'll see y'all one day, and I'll be waiting at the gates. And if y'all feel somebody pecking you on the back of the head, it's me just saying, "Hey, get it right. Come on."
Let me tell you, when he came into my office, he and Jennifer sat in my office to tell me what the final diagnosis was. And he and I have always been competitive. We're always trying to I buy Harley, he buys a Harley. I get one fast, he get one faster. It's always that way. And we're in the office, and man, I'm torn up over the news. And he says, "I'm going to beat you into heaven," and just smiled. And I couldn't hold back the tears after that. I thought, what a nut you are, boy. If you know Allan at all, if you spend any time around him recently, you'll know that this isn't all makeup right here. He's been talking like this, encouraging us. Everywhere, we go to encourage him, you walk away encouraged. He's saying, "Don't worry about me. You're left behind. I'm going where I want to go." So I think what we want to finish with is this. Here's the question. What should we learn from your experience? What do you want us to take away from this?
I want everybody to take away that faith in God is the healer of all. He may not heal your physical body, but he can heal your heart and your soul. I will tell you 100% that he can do that. I am a testimony to that, and I will be until the day I die. I will not give up the faith. I will be the testimony saying that God is going to be there for all of us, no matter who you are, what religion you are, no matter if you believe or not. He is going to be behind you, and he will be behind all of us.
Thank you. God bless you, Allan.
Yes, indeed.
Hey.
Love you. Love you too, bro.
Allan, we love you. Love Jennifer, love their whole family. I was there when Allan and Jennifer got married. Got married in the back of Mike and Bernice's yard. Hottest day I believe I've ever experienced. Grover Hastings did the wedding, and I was sitting there going, just marry them. Please, just marry them. Get us out of here. It was so hot. And they finally did get married, and have loved Allan and Jennifer and all that they have meant to Northside down through the years. And the thing I love about Allan is that Allan is that servant. Allan, I was surprised you could preach this good. If I'd known that, I would have had you up here years ago, okay? But Allan would always say, I can't preach, but I'll do whatever you want me to do. And over the years, that's what he's done. Teenagers needed chicken cooked. He said, I'll do it. We needed something done up here at the church. I'll do it. In fact, there's been a running joke in the church office for years that there was something at the church that was impossible to do, that nobody could possibly do it. We would just tell Allan Comer that it couldn't be done, and he was going to try to do it. And so I appreciate so much Allan's example for us. Jesus, as he was teaching the importance of serving, he said, you want to be great in the kingdom of God? He said, if you want to be great, then what you do is you learn how to serve. You want to be great, he lowered it a little bit more. He said, you learn how to be a slave. There's a word in the Greek, diakonos, we translate it a lot of times as deacon, but it literally means simply servant. And Allan's been that for so many years. Jennifer has too. But more than that, Jesus took it a step further. He said, you really want to be great? Learn how to be a doulos. Doulos was a word in the first century that nobody wanted to be. You see, the word doulos means be a slave. Put your desires away, put your wants away, and learn how to live for other people and invest in their lives. Jesus did that. I love Paul's description. Though he was in the form of God, he did not consider or regard equality with God as something to be possessed by force, but on the contrary, he emptied himself and he took the form of a slave. That's why when Jesus washed the disciples' feet, he said, all you got to do is do what I do. And boy, if we want to change the world, we do it that way. We learn how to make God, as Allan has said so beautifully this morning, God the center of everything in our life, even up to the point of death. I don't know where you are in your relationship with God. I would hope all of us can say, you know what? It's not about me. It's about Him. It's about honoring Him in my life. And if you've not been honoring Him in your life, why don't you make a commitment today, kind of like Allan did so many years ago when he said, you know what? It stops today and it begins with God today. Why not stop if your life's not been the way it should be and say, today it begins with God. If you've never been baptized, it begins with that. It begins with that confession of faith that says, I believe in Jesus Christ and I want to be buried with Him in baptism. And if you've done that, and like Allan, you've kind of strayed away from that. You've wandered away from that. Then sometimes it's about you saying, what? I want to come back. If you need to come back, why don't you come back right now? As together we stand and sing.